Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. You, I see.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica.
UIC Liberty TV. Change you can trust.
Okay, welcome back. I was shut down abruptly. Not too sure where we got cut off, but our system went down internet-wise. I had to go and switch over to a different internet service, and hopefully they won't shut us down again. But thank you very much for your patience and for coming back. Again, this is Joseph Patterson, and we're going to be talking about the banking system in Jamaica, particularly the fact that the governor of the Bank of Jamaica made some utterances that should significantly concern us and which reflects a serious problem behind the scenes that I'm going to explain to us in more detail. So hopefully we won't be cut off again. Sorry about what just happened. So our topic tonight is, again, the fake Bank of Jamaica misleading the nation. And I asked the question earlier, did you know that the Bank of Jamaica, BOJ, is actually not controlled by the people of Jamaica? Also, did you know that its governor, Richard Byles, apparently tried to mislead the nation recently? In fact, the so-called Bank of Jamaica is independent of our so-called elected representatives, which means that the Bank of Jamaica is also independent of the people of Jamaica. Now that is an oxymoron. How can the Bank of Jamaica be independent of the people of Jamaica if it is supposed to be a bank established to serve the people of Jamaica? But in fact, our politicians have legislated that the Bank of Jamaica become independent of them, because if it's not made so, then they are going to mess up our banking system. That's the argument. That's the logic. We have to make the Bank of Jamaica independent of those we elect to govern our country. We can trust them to govern our country, but we cannot trust them to govern our banking system. And so they have legislated to make the Bank of Jamaica independent of themselves. But who required that? We didn't ask them to do that. They never campaigned to us to do that. So who asked them to do that? Well, their foreign masters. Their foreign masters said to them that if you want to continue to do business with us, you need to make your bank independent of your politicians, even though these politicians are supposed to be the elected representatives of the people. So in effect, the Bank of Jamaica is not the Bank of Jamaica. It should more aptly be called the bank of those who control Jamaica, which of course implies that our politicians do not control Jamaica, because somebody else is. Somebody else controls our banking system. So the governor of Jamaica, the governor of the Bank of Jamaica, is really not working for the people of Jamaica, because the governor works for those who control the Bank of Jamaica, which, in my opinion, is the banking cartel that dictates the policies and the policy actions of the Bank of Jamaica. And so tonight I'm going to show you clearly how this is so and what this means for us in terms of what the governor of the Bank of Jamaica said. So it should be very clear to you that the Bank of Jamaica is really fake. And the governor of the Bank of Jamaica may be acting, in fact, on behalf of somebody other than the people of Jamaica. And so I'm going to show you clearly that the Bank of Jamaica governor may in fact be misleading us and even stealing from us while pretending to work for us. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting he is personally stealing and putting into his pocket directly, but he may be a part of a system which is stealing from us, which I'm going to explain to you in more detail. I want to share with you quickly an article that appeared in the Radio Jamaica online news. Here's the, let me see if I can find that for you here. Here's the article. If I can share it on my screen, let me try to do that. So this is the article that I picked up from the Radio Jamaica. I hope you can see that. The title of the article says, BOJ Governor faces backlash for cautioning against large wage increases. And if we scroll down, I'm going to read this for you. I'm going to talk about it. It says the governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Richard Byles, is facing backlash from trade unionists for his comment cautioning employers against massive wage increases. Mr. Byles has said a large jump in salaries could have a negative effect on inflation. Yeah, a large jump in salaries could have a negative effect on inflation. I'm going to prove to you shortly that that statement by itself implies that Mr. Byles is either a very ignorant economist or willfully seeking to deceive. But let's continue. It says, but this has not gone down well with General Secretary of the National Workers Union, Granville Valentine, who described the utterance as unfortunate and disturbing. He said the comment comes at a time when unions are seeking to get livable wages for their employees. The pronouncement, he says, is clearly indicative, meaning, signaling a direction, and makes it difficult for us when we go to the table, that's the bargaining table, to the risk of society, private sector, and other government institutions, that if we pay more than 6 or 7%, then it's going to affect the economy and inflation is going to be affected in such a bad way. They should have known this when they gave many persons 50, 60, 100, 200, 150% increase. There can be one law. He says there can't be one law for the rich and the other for the poor, he contended, calling for the BOJ governor to withdraw or explain the statement more clearly to the ordinary man. While he acknowledged the BOJ's responsibility to manage inflation, Mr. Valentine questioned whether it was the role of the central bank to set the tone of what should be paid in a free market. Now, I take exception to that because Jamaica is not a free market, which I'll explain in a bit. The trade unionist said the governor's comments risk creating a rift at the negotiating table between employers and workers' unions, as the employers will now be guided conveniently by the governor's statement, which is true. Development economist Dr. Chris Stokes believes the BOJ governor went outside his remit when he made a comment about salary increases and inflation. Quote, because we're not in a centrally planned economy, which is not true, we are in a centrally planned economy, well, a mixed economy, I'll explain that in a bit. He says, because we're not in a central planned economy, the wage policy is not the remit of the Bank of Jamaica. But I believe they are right to point out the fact that abnormal increases in wages can drive inflation. Again, that's not true, and I'll explain to you. Now, whether those increases bring somebody up to a livable wage is another question that needs to be addressed. But that is the basic economic theory behind it, end of quote. Still, Dr. Stokes reiterated that it is not the role of the BOJ to dictate or to prescribe policy in a free enterprise. Again, Dr. Stokes is assuming that we're in a free enterprise economy. We're not in a free market economy. I know that's what they have taught us. It's not true. It's a lie. For example, the Bank of Jamaica sets interest rates, which means it's not a free market economy. They manipulate exchange rate, so it's not a free market economy. They also control the volume of money, so it's not a free market economy. And they influence and create inflation. So if you're controlling interest rate, if you are controlling exchange rate, if you are messing with the value of the dollar, that's not a free market economy. That's a planned economy, a controlled economy. And there are other factors. Now, the president of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, Elaine Davis White, has said while she understands the theoretical aspect of the BOJ governor's concern, there's a real need for livable wages in order to attract and retain competent staff. And I'm going to share with you as well that that idea of a livable wage is actually foolishness. I'll explain. Now, the final quote I have here, I think, it says the reality is that when you do keep wages low, which is true, they are keeping wages low, as was the case, and is still the case in Jamaica, so that's a fact. You do have other effects as well, and you have effects in society which ends up creating almost a vicious cycle in terms of our ability to be able to have families that are able to survive and just basically keep their heads above water. So while we recognize this economic theory, which is a false theory, as I said before, you cannot only base it on just the theory. You have to look at what is happening in terms of the lived experiences. So again, they're playing with economic theory. I'm going to be speaking to you about facts, economic facts, the laws of economics. Now, let's turn our attention to what this article implies. Before I do that, I want to share with you, if you don't mind, let me share with you a little about the background of this man, Richard Byles. I want you to understand who he is, okay? Let me see if I can share that with you just a second. I want you to see his bio so you can get a feel for who the gentleman is and what it means when we talk about what he has to say. So here's the bio of Mr. Richard Byles, the governor of the Bank of Jamaica. Mr. Byles was appointed governor of the Bank of Jamaica effective the 19th of August 2019. Prior to joining the bank, Governor Byles has had a career spanning over 40 years in the private sector in areas of business and finance, and is one of the most accomplished corporate leaders in his generation. He has served as council member at the University of the West Indies, vice president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, watch it, he's coming from the PSOJ, and on many company boards. His public sector service includes serving as the first private sector co-chairman of Jamaica's landmark Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC. Deeply, he's a government man. He's a part of the system, which is to monitor Jamaica's performance under our IMF-supported reform program. So he's fully embedded in that system. Mr. Byles holds a BSc in economics from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and the MSc, or Master of Science, in National Development from the University of Bradford, England. He was awarded the Doctor of Humane Letters from Northern Caribbean University and the Doctor of Business from the University of College of the Caribbean. He's also an inductee to the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica's Hall of Fame, so very famous to the PSOJ guys, and an awardee from both the Observer and the Gleaner publications for his work as a private sector business leader. Mr. Byles is married to Jacinth and has two sons, Pavel and Yannick. So there you get a feel for Mr. Byles. Now I want you to watch this and listen to people's comments about his utterances. Let's hear what the people have to say. Then I'll share with you my take on the whole thing and how you should assess this matter carefully. Let me see if I can share that with you now. Just a minute. Okay, here we go.
Of the public are also blasting the Bank of Jamaica governor for suggesting that employers be careful in implementing large salary increases. Some Jamaicans lament that although the current inflation rate is lower than the corresponding period in 2022, food prices have consistently remained high. As Kalisha Williams reports, the National Consumers League has also weighed in.
Many Jamaicans have been livid since Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Byles warned employers against giving massive wage increases to their workers out of fear it could negatively impact inflation. Minimum wage earners are among the most upset.
We need to go sit down a full time before we get some money in our pocket. We work some dirty work, because me work with the rubbish. Yeah, and we all know we still at 9. We don't move from this for the 13 the government say yet, so we don't know where we really are going. But we are the small fish, so we have to just sit down and go and wait till when it's ready for we drop in our plate, we get it if it's the case.
Reason the pay can't do it for the worker, because the worker might work hard. When you work hard, you deserve the money.
Even with the BOJ governor clarifying that if the salary increases are accompanied by increases in productivity, the wage increase will not adversely impact the inflation rate, some Jamaicans were still not satisfied.
Maybe 1 people in a papa.
Public Relations Officer at the National Consumers League, Trevor Samuels, says many Jamaicans are upset because at present they are not getting large enough salaries to counteract the inflation currently eating away at their pockets. For instance, despite the annual inflation rate moving from 11.8% in April 2022 to 6.6% in July 2023, the cost of most goods and services has remained high.
So therefore, I think that, the regular consumer, his salary is not catching up with inflation. And therefore, his purchasing power is probably less than it used to be last year.
He stressed that there have been complaints from consumers about the adjustments in the inflation rate not being reflected on supermarket shelves. However, Mr. Samuel said it is a global issue.
When you look at cooking oil is now more expensive than it was last year this time. And even if you get a lower inflation at the BOJ and generally, it has not gone down to the consumers. On the supermarket shelves, it is still high and rising.
In regards to the statement from the BOJ governor,
the BOJ governor might be quite right, but then if you don't have the increase, then the standard of living of the consumer is going to go down. So therefore, we are caught between the rock and a hard place, no matter how you take it.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
All right, so now let me unpack all of this for us. I'm going to walk you through how to really analyze this and understand what is happening here. So first of all, we're not in a free market society. We're in what is called a mixed economy that is heavily government-centric. And the government, as I've explained to you several times, the government is owned and controlled by their foreign masters, from whom they get loans and grants, and they're also controlled by the PSOJ oligarchs locally that funds their election campaigns. In other words, we're not operating in a market where we truly get to have demand and supply deciding prices, deciding rates of interest, and deciding the value of our dollar based on our import-export. What we have is a controlled economy where the government is playing in every sector, as well as an independent entity called the Bank of Jamaica, which is manipulating us. Now, let's zero in on the word inflation. There are basically two types of inflation. If you were to look this up, you might find a number of others, but essentially there are only two types of inflation. One is what I call natural inflation, and the other is what I call artificial inflation. Now, natural inflation is caused by disruptions in supply and demand, caused by natural events, such as a storm wiping out a crop, resulting in the supply of that crop being less. And let's say the crop is highly demanded by society, you'd have a high demand, which is greater than the supply due to a natural phenomenon, such as a storm or hurricane that wiped out that crop, which means there's less of it available, while you have a large demand for it by the people who want that particular type of food. So the price of that food would go up. You'd call that natural inflation because you have a natural imbalance between the supply and the demand. Now, artificial inflation, which is what we suffer from the most, is caused by bad governance, where politicians engage in deficit spending, for example, or in underproductive borrowing at interest, causing the supply of money in the economy to exceed the supply of goods and services, or by the government undermining our productive capacity with bad policies, such as bad education policies, bad healthcare policies, bad regulatory frameworks, which lead to us being more import nation than an export nation. And if you're importing more than you export, it means you're also importing other people's inflation based on the prices that you have to pay. And because your importation is greater than your exportation, then the value of your currency is going to fall, which is going to push up almost all the prices you pay in your society. It's going to push up food prices. If you're importing more food than you produce, it's going to push up energy prices. If the value of your dollar has gone down and the cost on the world market of energy or oil has gone up. So all of these things factor in. So I call those artificial inflation because they're inflation. It's inflation that the government has control over and by their own actions causes the inflation, or if they take a different set of action, would have prevented the inflation. For example, if Jamaica had invested in being water, food, and energy secure, then you would find that our food costs would be lower because we would have built our local industry, our farming industry, our food production industry, and would therefore localize the cost of most of what we eat. Similarly, if we had built a local alternative energy industry where you're using more local sun generation or geothermal or biogas or whatever, you would have reduced your cost of imported fuel and therefore reduce the impact of imported inflation in that area. Okay? Now, the next thing we have to understand is that wages do not drive up inflation. It's impossible for wages to drive up inflation. Inflation, on the other hand, drives up wages. Think about it. Wages is a byproduct of the environment in which you operate. It is not an inflation creator. It is a lag indicator of inflation, meaning you first have to have inflation, which then forces or drives up wages. And then wages would have been inflated, but it's really an indicator. It's not a causation factor. And so the governor of Jamaica, the Bank of Jamaica, together with the government of Jamaica, is actually misleading people when they say the things that they say and further distort our knowledge. The problem is really inflation, not wages. The problem is inflation itself. It is misleading, therefore, to suggest otherwise, and the Bank of Jamaica governor has suggested otherwise. Now, this means that the BOJ governor, Mr. Richard Byles, is either uninformed in the area of economics, which is strange because that is his field of study, or he actually meant to mislead the people of Jamaica, probably in an attempt to maintain low wages in Jamaica to benefit his local and foreign masters. So they're using him as a puppet and using the Bank of Jamaica, which they control, which is supposed to be a respected institution, and he's supposed to be a highly respected and esteemed person. And they're using him to try to mislead the Jamaican people into thinking that if they were to get a wage increase commensurate with the reality of their lives here in Jamaica, that they, the workers, would be causing inflation, which is patently false. It is bad economics. It's wrong. It's misleading. It's incorrect. It's misinformation. It's downright lying to the people of Jamaica. If the two colonial parties, however, were working for us, they would have long outlawed the fraudulent banking system and the creators of artificial inflation if they were working for us. But we know that they're not working for us. Instead of outlawing the fraud that is causing artificial inflation, instead of outlawing the fraudulent banking system and giving Jamaica a proper banking system and a proper monetary system, they instead gave up control of the Bank of Jamaica to the global banking elites and is allowing them to mislead us with so-called inflationary targets. They call it inflation targeting, which is just another way of saying we're going to legally steal at least 4 to 6% from your earnings and your savings every year in perpetuity. For as long as you have us here as the Bank of Jamaica and the government of Jamaica, we are going to work in tandem to ensure that we steal 4 to 6% of your earnings and your savings every year in perpetuity. Yeah, so that's what they've done. And they actually tell this to us, but they know that we don't know what they're talking about. They tell us that they're going to be doing inflation targeting. You might recall earlier in his mandate, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, Mr. Clark, Nigel Clark, told us that we should stop looking at the exchange rate and focus on inflation, and that they are going to make sure that we do inflation targeting. And they've set the range of 4 to 6% that they're going to steal from us by way of inflation. Now, in other countries like Canada and so on, it's between 1 and 2% or 2 and 3%. We are 4 and 6%. Of course, last year, inflation was as high as 11 point something percent. Now, so your government is allowing the global banking cartel to steal 4 to 6% of your purchasing power every year. Now, that is poverty by design. They've designed it to keep you poor. So poverty is not a problem to be fixed. It is really a system that we need to destroy. And the UIC intends to destroy that system. So under the current system that they have, where they're doing inflation targeting and they've made the bank independent, and all of it is to protect you and make your life better off. Here's how they make your life better off. If you earn $100 an hour, and based on their inflation targeting, you lose 6% of your pay every year. So your earnings go down by 6% every year because inflation is going up. So your earnings would go down in year one from $100 an hour to $94 an hour. That's 6% drop. The following year, it will go down from $94 to $88 an hour. The next year, year three, it will go down to $83 an hour. So this is what their inflation targeting is doing to your earnings. That's why you're struggling. That's why you're suffering. So you go down from $100 an hour to $94 an hour to $83 an hour. Now, let's say they finally gave you a whopping 6% increase in year four. While, of course, in year four, inflation is also, let's say, 6%. It means that when they give you that 6% increase, your earnings would have actually dropped over the 4-year period by 18%. So after 4 years, you're 18% behind, even with a 6% increase. What a massive trick. What a massive piece of deception. And they're getting away with this each and every year. Yes. So they have been tricking you like this for the last 60 years, 80 years. They made sure that most of us don't understand math, don't understand finance, don't understand economics. And of course, they make sure that we don't understand inflation either. And we don't realize that inflation is created by the government, by government action or by government inaction. Because of this, they're able to mislead the majority of us with fanciful jargons, complex sounding terms, and big words. I'm here to keep it very simple. The UIC is here to make it very clear to you so you understand what's going on. Here's the simple fact. As cost of living rises, workers will instinctively feel the pinch, and they're going to push for increased wages, which is what is happening now. So that push for increased wages is what you're feeling now. And they're telling you, don't do it. Don't do too much increase because it's going to be a problem. Lie. It's a fact that as workers feel the pinch in their pockets, feel the pinch in their grocery bill, feel the pinch in their transportation cost, feel the pinch in their inability to keep up with the cost of energy, the cost of water, the cost of food, the cost of rent, the cost of transportation. As they feel the pinch, they're going to push for wage increases. They're going to steal from their employers. They're going to do side hustles just to make ends meet. And some are going to leave the formal sector altogether and engage in all kinds of devious practices to compensate for the fact that their government is boxing them in, suppressing them, oppressing them, and causing them to have to change their behaviors to try to make ends meet somehow. This is very logical. It's very logical that as you're losing your purchasing power due to government inflation, which I call artificial inflation, you are going to adjust your behavior. Now, we're not encouraging people to steal. What I'm saying is this is the natural consequences. And that's why many jobs, the workers steal, they try to find ways and means to steal from their employer, various ways. You saw it in the big, massive frauds that you see in the banks and other sector. People working in a hardware store, in a grocery store, they steal in an effort to cope with the stress and the pressure of what's happening. They push for wage increases, those who can. Some can't because they're afraid of losing their jobs. Those who are in the public sector with strong collective bargaining units, they push in their own way. But here's the bottom line. Employers and employees are in the best position and the only moral position to engage in negotiation for wage rates. It's not something for the government to do. It's not something for a central bank to do. It's not something for any other third-party authority to do. And as long as we don't train our workers, train our people, educate our people, and empower our people to understand the value of trading value for value, to understand the connection between productivity and money, and their power of negotiating appropriately for what they're worth and to make sure that they produce what they're worth. Then you're creating a fake economy with a lot of manipulations, which leaves a lot of people under the bus in the end. Economics is really simple, very, very simple. And I'm going to break it down for you in just a few sentences. Economics, we can look at it this way, very, very simple. Every seller wants the highest price for what he's selling, and every buyer wants to pay the lowest price for what she's buying. Neither of them will sell or buy at a given price unless they think they're benefiting from the deal. If you allow the market to work, you'll always end up at the price where both parties are most satisfied given the trade-off between them. If you create artificial manipulations like what we have in Jamaica, where the Bank of Jamaica messes up with our interest rate, messes up with our exchange rate, and is now trying to mess around with our wage rates, and government doing the same thing in their own way, and writing regulations that give some companies monopoly status or group of companies monopoly status. If you take those away and allow the market to work, you're going to see a much better result. But the market will not work very well if you don't educate your people very well. When you educate your people very well, you're going to have more higher skilled people and greater competition and also more opportunities. In Jamaica, they have restricted the opportunities, created a large number of low educated and low productivity persons, and then have them compete for a few jobs, which makes the employer the controller of the handle of the knife. And that's a bad economic model that we have followed. The price of labor is no different from what I just described in terms of buyer and seller. The employer wants the best employees at the lowest possible price, and the employee wants the highest price for the least amount of effort. And again, you have to allow those two markets to meet. There is therefore no such thing as a livable wage, just a negotiated wage. So this idea of a livable wage is actually, it's a nice sounding thing. It makes people feel good, but who decides what's a livable wage? There's no such thing as a livable wage. What you want is for persons to earn at their maximum capacity. What is your capacity to produce? And based on that, you're earning. And you're never going to have that if you don't have a truly free and fair economy. Because if you have an economy where the PSOJ, for example, the oligarchs, control the government and get policies that are favorable to them, then you're not getting a truly free and fair market economy. It's a controlled economy. And that is why the Bank of Jamaica governor, Mr. Richard Byles, decided that he's going to step in and warn us not to increase wages too much, because if you do, it's going to create inflation, which is a lie. He also backtracked a bit and tried to say, well, he was saying if you increase wages beyond productivity. But that's ridiculous. No company would increase wages beyond productivity, because every company wants to make sure that the productivity of their employees is greater than the amount that they're paying the employee. So paying the employee more than productivity would be detrimental to the company. So that is nonsensical. And it's really a shame to hear an economist and somebody who's so decorated in the business world making such nonsensical statements and people buying it and not, contesting him on the economics of what he's saying. They're actually saying they agree with him and that's what the theory says. No. He's misleading, he's misrepresenting, he's misstating the facts. So what you have is either an artificially imposed wage, which punishes those who fall below the threshold, or you have a market-determined wage, which reflects the trader's realities and provides the feedback necessary for each to make informed personal and professional decisions. What do I mean by that? If you have artificially imposed wages, you're going to automatically push some people out of the market and turn them into criminals, which is what we have done. If you have a market-driven wage determinator, then everybody in the market will be able to find their place. And when they find their place, they'll be able to rise accordingly based on the feedback they get from the market. The The market tells you which jobs are more lucrative, which sector you need to aim for, what skill sets you need to maximize your productivity in a particular market, and so on. If you don't allow the market to work, then you distort the price signal that comes from whatever the product is, in this case, labor. And labor is not homogeneous. Labor comes in different sizes and shapes, in different levels of competences. So you have to allow for the market to work that out while making sure you're giving everyone an equal opportunity, that you're building a meritocratic system that allows people who may be on the lower end of the earning scale to have a decent shot of rising if they were to apply themselves, if they were to be productive. If you maintain a system where it's not meritocratic, which means you're not going to rise based on your own personal productivity, then you distort the system, you push people out, you create artificial barriers to entry, artificial prices, and you then create a lot of serious social breakdown, which is what we're seeing in Jamaica. Now, the UIC continues to propose that we encourage and allow serious wage negotiations between employers and employees based on their relative financial realities. And once you've done this, to peg the wages to inflation and the productivity increases. What will this do? It will ensure that, one, wages are at the different levels set appropriately based on the realities of both the employer and the employees, so that you have fairness. And then two, you will have pegged it to inflation so that as inflation changes, the wages change accordingly, and you don't have to have this unnecessary fight to get your wages adjusted. You also want to implement a productivity segment in this new wage package, so that as the employees increase their productivity, either through retooling themselves or building their own skills, or by the use of technology, which we're going to have more of, as you're seeing. So new technologies are augmenting, the human factor and increasing the productivity. Make sure the employee also participates in that productivity growth. So two things: you're pegging the wages to inflation to protect against the devaluation or the reduction in purchasing power that I just talked about. And you're also promising the worker through contract that productivity gains will be shared with them automatically as well. Lee Kuan Yew did this powerfully and beautifully in Singapore. Not exactly the way I just described, because obviously he did that back in the 60s and 70s without the kind of knowledge I have today. So we can improve on that and make it better for Jamaica. The sooner we do this, the sooner we stop wasting time on wage disputes and instead focus on productivity, production, and real prosperity, is the sooner we're going to have a much better Jamaica and stop playing games with the lives and livelihoods of our people. When elected, the UIC will take back the Bank of Jamaica from the global banking cartel. And we're going to make it no longer a fake, but a real Bank of Jamaica, one that works with the people of Jamaica. So no more independent bank and no more banking cartel-driven bank, but a Bank of Jamaica which provides the kind of liquidity necessary for the government to have a balance in its budget and its outflows in a way that protects the purchasing power of Jamaicans by the government not paying high interest rate, if any, on the funds it needs to grow the economy internally. We're also going to make sure we have what is called real money instead of fake money by outlawing artificial inflation to protect your purchasing power, so you can save to retire with dignity without having to engage in risky investment activities. We're going to have what we call free banking that recognizes banking as a universal right and make it accessible to all without compromising our personal privacy or subjecting to any form of digital manipulation. Under the UIC system of governance, you'll be liberated and government will be limited. so that money and banking will no longer be weaponized against us. A vote for the UIC is really a vote for unity, for liberty and empowerment. A vote for the UIC is to protect the right to your life, liberty, and property within a safe, clean, and orderly society. A vote for the UIC is for a truly free and fair economy where all can honestly live, earn, and retire with dignity. I hope you'll understand all that I've just said and realize how important it is for us to move away from not only the two colonial parties, but the colonial system with its fake banking, fake money, fake freedom, fake democracy, and fake independence. It's time for us to have real substantive independence, a real economy, a real banking system, one that works for you and works for me and all of us in a free society. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I have to run because I have another meeting. I have like 4 minutes. So any questions before I go? 4 minutes? Yes, Dr. Coretta, a model of equity and transparency. Yes, so you're quite right. Norman Clark says, will you be interested in joining BRICS? I don't want to say yes or no. We're going to look at every form of international relationship to make sure that the interest of Jamaica and Jamaicans are fully protected. So if working with BRICS will protect our interests, then we will. But we have to assess very carefully. Agra Valley says Black people are being trapped because they buy into the individualistic Euro-American culture and allow themselves to be duped by the European white supremacy brand of Christianity. It's a very interesting statement there. Any other questions or comments before I go? I have another meeting in about 3 minutes. All right. Let me know if you understood. Give me a rating now. Let me know if you got it, if it made sense to you, 100%. If it didn't make any sense at all, 0 or 1%. And if it's so in the middle, 50%. Please give me your feedback now if you can, before I have to go. What is your assessment of this presentation on our fake Bank of Jamaica? Jasmine Paul says, I just can't understand how people are taking so long to see how much this leader is suited as the president of Jamaica. Thank you for your confidence, Ms. Powell. Thank you, Mr. Howard Foster. Thank you, Junior Trouble and Dr. Coretta. Thank you, Gina Graham. Yeah, man. So let me know if you like what was presented. I try my best to keep it very simple to make sure we really understand, grassroots economics, and it's not very complex, but they've made it very hard. So even when I'm trying to explain it to you, I have to try to overcome, the morass which they've put in our brains, to deflect us away from the truth. But please know, the Bank of Jamaica is not working for you, nor is the government working for you. Our monetary system is not working for us. The Jamaican dollar is not working for us. None of it is designed to make us wealthy, to preserve our purchasing power, to make retiring a dignity that you can enjoy. It is all designed to rob you of your efforts. It's a form of slavery that is monetized, that is more an economic model than the physical brand of slavery. So at the end of the day, you work hard, but they're gradually pulling the rug from under your feet. So as you work hard, you're working hard to get nowhere. Yes, a few of us can escape it by, our genius. Like I was very fortunate that I've spent most of my life studying finance. So I'm able to make sense of it. But I've met accountants and finance people who don't understand this kind of stuff. They just do regular day-to-day finance, but they don't quite understand what's going on. So they can be working in a bank or working in an accounting firm or working in an economics unit while not appreciating what I'm talking about. But thank you so much for your feedback. Really appreciate it. Have a good night until we talk again. Remember, one Jamaica, we're stronger together. Please donate. We need your funds to ensure we have enough candidates across the country and properly financed to win the government. Thanks and take care. All the best.